Hello everyone, the case building time is up. Let me do a quick roll call. OG, are you complete?
Wait a second, my partner is going to the toilet for a second.
All right, sure. Um, OO, are you complete?
Complete.
Okay. CG, are you complete?
Yes, we are complete.
Complete.
CO, are you complete?
Complete.
Okay, let's wait for opening government.
Opening government is ready.
Ready, both of you?
Yeah. Both of us ready.
All right, sure. Wait a moment. All right. Uh, Hello everyone, I'm Meral and I'm going to be the chair for this round. Well, first of all, welcome to the semifinal of NUDC Novice category 2020. Woo! All right. So I would like to remind you two things before we start the debate. The first is about the timer. I highly encourage you to use your own timer because I'm going to do the timer as well. However, I will only notify you when it already comes into 7 minutes. So if you want more notification, please use your own timer. Second of all, the default for POI is being done through the chat room. But if you as a debater prefer to receive POI through direct audio, please mention it before your speech. So for example, you can say things such as, "Hi, I'm Meryl Dahlia, I'm the Prime Minister, and I prefer to receive POI through direct audio." So yeah, just to make everything clear from the beginning. Right, so I guess since we're complete, without any further ado, I call upon the Prime Minister. Floor is yours. Here.
Before I start, I prefer my POI direct audio is okay.
Sure.
By the way, am I audible? Am I clear?
Yes, loud and clear.
Okay, cool. Starting in 3, 2, 1. Historical injustice of the underprivileged happens because of the historical less capital of the certain people. The reason why black, for example, is less privileged than white people because in the past white people have more capital than black people in the very first place. So we here in OG we believe that the best way for these underprivileged people to gain their rights back of the capital that have been taken away is to actually focus more of the activities that will likely lead them to have more of this have gained back of those capital in the very first place, right? So let me clarify what the kind of parameter of these points that are talking about, right? So like things like part-time job obviously going to be 9, like going to a full work job likely to be 10, and things like, for example, going to your university and school. This is very important, right? Because the fact that it's an investment for you to gain economic benefit in the future, we're going to put it for things like, for example, if you're going to university, like 8 or 7, so on and so forth, right? So things that is, even if it's not directly getting economy, but it's investment for economy in the future, we're going to make it a more than 5. But things like, for example, hanging out with your friends, going to the party, for example, it would like it to be less than 5 because we think that it's a waste of time. You should not do this in the very first place. Any clarification? No. Okay. I'm going to continue. Getting into my first point, I'm going to explain to you the context why being underprivileged is about having less capital and pursuing economic activities will likely to make all of this problem likely to be better. Why is this the case? Because being privileged or not is dependent of where you are in the capital of the history. Like for example, like how many money that how many capital that you have in the certain past. For example, what your race, for example, in the past in a certain history, so on and so forth, right? Like things like historical discrimination, so on and so forth. Like for example, the reason why black people is less privileged than white people in the very first place is exactly the reason being is because black people was being pushed to become a slave, for example, and being cut out of all of their cut off all of their money in the very first place. Yes, POI.
You think that oppression will only not happen to uncapital people, while you think a lot of artists in South Korea still getting oppression even they have a lot of high capital to begin with, because oppression happen when there is social construct that has created and toxic in society currently.
Yes, but at least okay. So you consider that both sides will likely to have oppression. Obviously, like human have specific things that can discriminate other people. But at least the fact that you have more capital, the fact that all of this for all of this reason, you're likely to be less oppressed than under your side of the house, because like you are already underprivileged in the very first place. What will happen if you don't have more, if you have very less capital and still live in the poor? We think that likely to be worse. At least on the side of the house, you have money, right? For example, to buy you household, for example, that out of or gain respect, for example, that is likely to make you being discriminated, ladies and gentlemen. So I'm going to further clarify this in my substantive. B, having more power in capital, for example, like is inherently likely to make you oppress the people in the poor in the very first place. That is why the reason like UK, England, for example, in the past, the fact that they have a lot of capital, they oppress other less fortunate country in the very first place. So we think that as underprivileged, it is our right to gain our capital back with this specific motion. How is this the case? Why we think that this will likely to work? Because A, the world is inherently pragmatic, that is to say they're neoliberal. If you want to gain money, then you should work hard. Even this also applies to privileged people in the very first place, like white people, like the privileged white people, for example. They know that if you want to gain more money, then you have to work so on and so forth. That you cannot see any other way of how you likely to gain more respect and more privilege, being more privileged and under the shut of the house, like comparatively under the shut of the house. Like we have also seen a lot of underprivileged people that can break down the barrier and actually become a lot more fortunate by working hard, for example, like Oprah Winfrey, Michael Jordan, or other kind of certain minorities in the very first place, right? And B, this is very important, right? In the specific time in century and in its years, we have things like, for example, the existence of affirmative action and social movement that continuously fighting for the injustice and inequality that happen to the certain people that specifically would be beneficial for this specific people. The fact that they are fighting for equalities, making affirmative action, for example, it will likely to be useless if you're not working hard to gain this economic advantage. What kind of affirmative action I'm talking about? I'm talking about things like, for example, like how Oscar in the next year is making this policy that if you want to have a movie being put in the Oscar, they have to someone from the other privileged background to work in the specific Oscar, or things like, for example, company pushing like a policy like having 50% women, for example, as a form of affirmative action. If not, they will likely to be things like cancelled, so on and so forth. All of these things explain to you that under shut of the house, if they're trying to say that no, there is no way that the specific underprivileged can gain money, which that they can, because specifically in this country, people already progressive enough trying to push off all of these people to make their life better in the very first place. So my second point will explain to you what is the trade-off and why it will be okay. We understand that it will not likely to be easy for them to work hard every day, like to push only for above 5 activities in the very first place. But we think that the trade-off is still okay, ladies and gentlemen. Why is this the case? Because our trade-off, yes, you might have to work hard, but why this is still okay? A, because everyone also does this. Like even after I told to you, even the privileged of cases, they have to even work hard to gain their respect. For example, like privileged white people that is poor in the very first place, it still exists. Thus, like what will happen if you are already underprivileged, if you're already, for example, black people and being pushed to police brutalities, for example, then you do not work hard. Like the things that are likely to happen worse to them in the very first place. So we think that you should do this, like everyone do this, those who should do this too, to gain more respect in the very first place. And B, things like below 5 might be fun. We understand that you going to party or hanging out with your friend might likely to be fun. But things like this are fun and temporary. In the very, like if you go like, for example, if you go like to a party, for example, or just simply hanging out with your friend every day, or just doing nothing in your house, for example, you might have fun in that specific time, but in the long term, you feel like, why didn't I work hard in the very first place? Now I have no capital, for example. Now I am less fortunate than others, for example, because I was lazy in the past, so on and so forth. This specific, so I've explained to you that the specific below 5 activities, like hanging out, so on and so forth, is less It might be fun, but only fun in the short term. In the long term, there is no investment to be betterment for these specific people. And we think that, see, even without capital, trying to hang out with your friends, so on and so forth, you have to still be oppressed by the people that is more privileged than you. For all of this reason, we think that I'm very proud to propose.
Right. Thank you, Prime Minister. To respond to the case of the Prime Minister, I would like to call upon the leader of opposition. Floor is yours. Here.
Check. Am I audible?
Yes, you are audible.
You can just unmute yourself. Okay, I will start my speech in 3, 2, 1. Member of the House, OG benefit can only apply if they can prove to you how big power of this individual and this minority in status quo to compete and pursuing these ones. Moreover, in status quo on how the discrimination, even pressure still exists toward this kind of underprivileged and the minority in itself, then it's very hard for them to even getting this and pursuing these ones, right? Therefore, this debate should talk about which one the happiness that more accessible for this individual at the very first place, because this is the very important burden that we need to prove in this debate. Several rebuttals for the opening government. First, they're talking about that this individual will going to be success. They will have the settled income, for example. Therefore, they will getting this respect and changing the behavior of the society. No, you will still being discriminated, because the reason why discrimination exists is not only because you're capital, but sometimes you have a different value within your majority, for example. Therefore, even if you become rich people, for example, you still not being respected by anyone because you still have this kind of the value at the very first place. It shows you if the problematic in status quo is not your capital, but is the problematic is that the value or even the behavior of the majority in itself. Why under the result of the House the discrimination will going to be worse at the end of the day? Under the result of the House, this individual will going to be worse because at the end of the day, this individual will not going to getting support by the community anymore. Why so? Because in the past on how they are very selfish in thinking about themselves. Therefore, the moment they getting the discrimination, they will not have this kind of the support anymore, because within that support is something that important, because you don't have anyone in this particular place, for example. Therefore, this is very worse toward this individual. But even if you are going to be getting the respect, for example, you will be a success person, for example. But we say this happiness will only going to be delusional happiness at the end of the day. Why so? Because at the end of the day, the goals of this debate that we are going to protect underprivileged people, changing the behavior of the majority in itself will no longer happen, because the respect will only toward yourself, not toward your community, not toward the underprivileged people or this minority in itself. We think these goals will never achieve under the under the government teams. Other rebuttal will be intertwined in my speech. I have 3 points of analysis. First, why when underprivileged and minority pursuing the score above 5 will only lead into the pressure for this kind of the individual. Understanding on how in the status quo, they come from poor circle, for example, they come from a minority. It's very hard for them to achieve advance, for example, to pursuing their education, to pursuing career, for example, simply because why? Number one, they have low basis of number. Second, they don't have enough capacity in terms of changing behavior or in terms of enter this particular education, for example, this is very important in order for us to pursuing education, getting a job, and so on and so forth. In status quo, on how they already suffer, looking on how the case of discrimination that always happen, it's already embodied to the society and very structural in itself. They getting a judgment, for example, even in terms of entering the job and so on and so forth. We think this kind of the people in status quo is already getting suffer, right, in terms of mental breakdown and cannot develop at all. This narrative only praise and force this individual to always focusing on work, for example, force them to do anything to pursuing the materials, for example. This will only even increase the pressure toward this individual at the end of the day, because the fact that is very hard for them to reach this kind of the particular thing at the end of the day. Even if they're talking about on people like Obama and so on and so forth that can become a success person, for example, we think that it's only a certain type of individual that can do that, right? We cannot generalize all of the people can do or even second, they have a different background within this kind of the individual, because sometimes even like Obama and so on, they have the capacity, they have the capital, for example, at the very first place, therefore they becoming a president at the end of the day. We think that we cannot generalize it at the end of the day, right? They will make them ever never get their individual fulfillment at the end of the day, because they're only focusing on how pursuing this core at the end of the day. Therefore, we think that it will only lead toward the pressure to this individual. Therefore, the protection will not going to be happen under the side of the house. Second point of analysis: why, when this underprivileged or minority pursuing the action in itself, will never achieve the interest of this community at the end of the day? What is their interest at the very first place? Number one is that improve the quality of their community, right? Getting a protection, for example, by belonging their quality of life. They can face the majority that always pressure them, for example. Why? How can do that is simply because they have low basis of number, Mr. Madam Chairs. Under the set of the house, this individual will always thinking about their self. They're only focusing their self to work, for example, and so on and so far. Even what will be happen when they success at the end of the day, their tendency is that make themselves more rich at the end of the day, right? We don't think that this is good. Why so? Because they will not aware within their anymore. Why this is likely? Number one, they think that they their self already secure at the very first place because they have the capacity, for example, they can do anything, for example. But second, simply they will feel they don't have any kind of moral responsibility to protect their community at the end of the day. Meanwhile, understanding that these kind of people can be success at the end of the day because they having support coming from their community at the very first place, right? It shows to you that this kind of the individual have the moral responsibility to take care and aware within their community at the end of the day. But under the set of the house, this individual will going to be selfish and not aware within their community at the end of the day. What will happen is that it's very hard for this kind of the community to achieve their interest, to getting acknowledged by the society, because right now the power and also the number of bases will going to be spread at the end of the day. Even if they're talking about the motivation, we think that only the toxic motivation toward this individual at the end of the day, because they will think that it's very hard for them to achieve that. Therefore, the interest of this community will no longer happen under the set of the house. But lastly, talking about which one the more accessible happiness that we can reach at the end of the day. We're talking about happiness that can be realistic, right? The happiness should be more accessible for both of the minority and underprivileged in itself. We're talking about the idea of happiness is not only about the materials, right? Because it's very objective for every single individual. But under our side of the house, the happy pursuing is that the belongings within our community is that on how we can gather within our community to improve our quality of life, to face the discrimination that exists. Under the happiness will only going to be delusional happiness, because it's very hard for them to reach this kind of particular position. For example, even the things that will be happen is that mental breakdown for this individual, because they will feeling stress in facing a lot of problem in pursuing this kind of the particular job and so far. Under our set of the house, we okay with their condition right now, that poor, for example, and so far, and we are going to still improve it step by step by our community at the end of the day. But at least we can happiness within our community. We can gather with our belongings, for example. But simply at the very first place, you still having a power within your community, and it will be important for you to achieving your interest at the end of the day. And we think that the happiness more accessible under opening opposition. We're very proud to open the case by opening opposition.
Thank you very much, Leader of Opposition. Leader of Opposition spent 7 minutes and 20 seconds. To respond to the case of the Leader of Opposition, I call upon the Deputy Prime Minister. Floor is yours.
Am I audible?
Yes, you are audible.
I prefer a POI from mic, so you can just unmute yourself. Feel free to unmute yourself. Okay. Wait, I'm setting up a timer. I'm going to start my speech in 3, 2, 1. Members of the House, you need to understand that our goal as a government is not really that high up there for asking for these individuals to become CEO in such a short time. We don't ask them to suddenly gain $1 million income every month. Our goal is just for them not to wasting their efforts, and all of the activities that they're spending should be should be benefiting in terms of economic, right? We do not care about the amount that they will spend, or the amount that they will gain, but at least what you're doing is for the sake but at least what you're doing is going to be productive, and we think that it is better compared to wasting your activities out there that do not helping you to get out of, especially you're an underprivileged group of from the very beginning, right? Clarification towards opening opposition. Yes, of course, the trade-off is like become you. It's they keep on saying that delusional happiness and so on and so forth, right? At least under our side of the house, you can still feel happy by having your first income and so on and so forth, right? But we say that under their side of the house, these people cannot enjoy and entertain themselves from the to begin with, because they're unprivileged anyway, right? The problem, they keep on saying that these people should search for a meaningful happiness, like they should still focus on their community and so on and so forth. But the problem with this minorities and underprivileged group is that they cannot even afford things that can be fully entertaining themselves, that can be fully enjoy themselves. For example, like hanging out with their groups, they need to spend money and so on and so forth. So we think that under their side of the house, they will not even get it. First, they do not get a fully happiness, they cannot enjoy it to the fullest, and second of all, they will not they do not do something that can contributes back in for them in the future. So we think that uh, it is not worthy for them, right? I'm going to extend Indra's cases by explaining about two things. The first one is how this proposal is not only solving their economic problems but also helps them to get out of from this systematic oppression. Second of all, I'm going to talk about how this could help them to reach happiness to the fullest. All of my responses towards OO will be integrated inside my speech, right? First, how this proposal is not only solving their economic problem, but also helps them to get out from this systematic oppression. When Indra told you about why being underprivileged is about having capital, we shows you that we identified the problem is within the system. So the solution is to get rid, is to able to top off from this system entirely, which is the economic problem, right? We can see that what OO concern is that racism can still happen in the process of pursuing these activities, but they need to realize in the significantly in this time, in this very time, people are getting this underprivileged community is not that oppressed in this time, right? There is another things such as affirmative action and so on and so forth that Indra had already talk to you, right? This shows to you that this is the best time for them, and they need to utilize it, not to make a mistake, because we need to understand that these opportunities cannot come twice, right? So we should take this opportunity by being very productive, and then we can at least have gain our happiness by creating gaining some income and so on and so forth, right? But second of all, I'm going to explain to you why this could help them to reach a happiness to the fullest, which will clashes with OO points about they will not care about their communities, right? You need to notice that the characteristic of this underprivileged group is that they always think that they are useless, they are purposeless, and they are a burden for the society. When OO come up and say that they'll only be focused on being rich, that will not untrue, because this kind of thoughts is the thing that will drive them to help the other, right? After we managed to prove to you that our side of the house is the best opportunity for you to gain a better future by making all of your activities become economically benefits towards you. We shows to you that this our side of the house able to contribute betterment, because our proposal contributes betterment for their economical capability. What likely to be happen is that these people will finally be able to maximize their happiness by sharing pleasures with the other people, and especially from their community, right? Because these groups finally can also obtain a pleasure that is very meaningful if they share it with the others. Coming from the unfortunate background, they'll able to relate towards the other towards their community, and the happiness will not stops with them, but under our side of the house, they can create a cycle inside the society. Talking about shared pleasure can only, and also talking about shared pleasure under their side of the house, the shared pleasure will be less meaningful, right? Because they do not have the capital to contribute a better help and share the meaningful pleasure. But under our side of the house, if you already able to at least gain some economical profits, then you can have a more meaningful shared pleasure that can only be better, that can only be in a better scale if you're able to afford that in the very first place. So the final takeaway from this is that under our side of the house, we will lead into a more sustained happiness compared to their side of the house. Uh, uh, Compared to their side of the house that only create a happiness on that short term, right? Moreover, talking about the discrimination that might happen, right? We need to concede that in both side of the house, discrimination might happen. But if you take a look under our side of the house, when we as a oppressed group shows to them that we want to work hard, we are those people. We do not want to stop from we do not want to stop working. That creates a good impression towards the society, so that the discrimination will be less. People will not see you as someone that is only waiting for welfare and so on and so forth, but people will respect you. People will pay you back, and thus the discrimination will washed away under our side of the house. We're so proud to propose.
Thank you very much, Deputy Prime Minister. The Deputy Prime Minister spent 7 minutes and 35 seconds. All right, to close the opening debate, I would like to call the Deputy Leader of Opposition. The Deputy Leader of Opposition, floor is yours. Here.
Am I audible? Check, am I audible?
Yes, you are audible.
Yeah. I'm going to start my speech in 3, 2, 1. Eju, please know that even if the majority of Chinese people in Indonesia are above average of capital, they still getting oppression. There's no bully anyway by the majority in itself, right? That is the reason why the oppression that a government trying to claim, because you have a lot of capital, not sure in this debate, right? The reason why you are rejected is not only because your economical background, because we say to you that oppression still going to be happen even in the Korea, for example, when you still have a lot of capital in itself, right? We say to you that the social supporters is the most important when you are minority and you don't have a lot of money to compete with the privileged people, right? Several clarification come from Desa Dahas. Here's the thing. I think under Desa Dahas, the individuals do it a work and pursuing as high as possible position. Therefore, if they're talking about this is will not giving pressures, we don't think it's will going to be happen under Desa Dahas, because these standards will as always increasing under Desa Dahas, right? But here's several rebuttal coming from Desa Dahas. First of all, they trying to argue about these people, right? In the process of pursue activities, I think notice that oppression still going to be happen, right? The question that happens that how you directly having a lot of capital, ladies and gentlemen, because we state to you there is a longer process for you to getting a lot of money, right? Looking how Jack Ma becoming a billionaire in dozen years, not in the one day, ladies and gentlemen. How you can survive when there's a lot of oppression, when you don't have support system, because you will land only getting a money, you will left behind of your friends and so on and so forth. I don't think that happiness that they're trying to claim not will happen on this debate, right? Oji said that happiness under our side the house with friends is only short term and temporary. No, ladies and gentlemen, because your happiness right now with your friends, we decided your future journey. Why? Like when you have better support system of friends, they will influence yourself to be better in terms of taking decision, to be survive in the oppression zone that happen in majority, right? That is being the reason why this happiness is not short term but long term, that influence your survivability in the current status quo, right? But secondly, they trying to say they fear so much that under the has this minority couldn't be survived because we don't have money. Please not edu that not stand that we ban individuals job, we do not work anyway, because human naturally have sense to survive and they know that this happened by money, right? Therefore this minority still rational to getting money in terms of job and so on and so forth, but not only pursuing this money at all, ladies and gentlemen. Therefore these people still can survive under the has. But as human, you cannot just only pursuing your life in money, right? You have a characterization of tired, for example, by oppression and down and so on and so forth. You still have another way to support your community if they fear we cannot have another people. But you can do it another way, like you can share happiness, for example. Maybe you still can give money, but it's still in the little amount. But I think it's gonna be justified because that is shows how good you are as a person, right? But lastly, they're trying to say that money is most important thing to get acknowledged. Question that happened that how the parameter will achieve under desa dahas when we live in capitalism era, when the standard days of every majority as always increase, when standard days of money as always like iPhone type that as always change. The acknowledge of their side just temporary at the end of the day, because when you have iPhone 11 Pro, yes, people will acknowledge, but when iPhone 21 Pro release, for example, the acknowledge will gone anyway, ladies and gentlemen. But more than that, they're trying to say that under desa dahas there is affirmative action in status quo, but the number is not really significant, even if there is a certain requirement that are for individuals to achieve, right? At the end of the day, this affirmative action only in the white paper of glorification, because they still discriminate at all, right? Because people even still sit in the parliament as majority at all, that oppress themselves at all. What you need to do is that having good bonding by one umbrella to support your future journey at the end of the day. But lastly, about the sustainability happiness, understand that the probability to lose is higher under desa dahas when they lose, for example, when they not becoming a billionaires, they will more discriminate at all, but they also will lose their support system, ladies and gentlemen. It shows the suffering of these individuals will going to be happen. On my speech, I'm going to prove to you when this minority do not have capacity to compete in job circumstances, what is the implication? Number one, I think my first speakers have been told you that this minority will tend to fail because their capacity is not enough to compete with privileged people who have good education background, for example, who have a lot of support by biggest company and so on and so forth. Sure, you got money, but it's not significant because under opening government, you only becoming cleaning service, for example. There is this sustainability not also going to happen under desa dahas. But why probability of harm will higher under desa dahas? Because when you fail, you will be lose support system like friend that truly needed in terms of survivability, right? This friend is something that's important to acknowledge your problem, because when you live as a black woman in patriarchal culture or even LGBTQ in conservative your family also oppress yourself anyway, ladies and gentlemen, because you do not fulfill the standards on this conservative zone. Therefore, this friends relationship is something that is important in terms of survivability, right? Because why? Because the community is something that is important to make you survive in oppression world. Probability of stress will be higher under this because you will lose any kind of support system that make you survive at all, right? But even if when this minority achieve their interest to be reached, what will going to be happen? Number one, happiness will not likely to be happen because there is still hard for you to blend with the majority at all. Why? Because the standards of majority not only about capital, they have standards about sexuality in Muslim majority, white skin in United States of America, Meanwhile, this appearance is not something that likely to changing when you have money, right? Why? Because even you do surgery, for example, it's something that is harm. Why? Because it is proof you do not will have freedom of happiness because you will following any kind of majority demand that also was increased, right? But secondly, looking how the scenario that likely to happen when you have a lot of money, you will likely to fulfill your own interest, like bullying, like buying a car, having a huge home, because that is seems like their dream when they becoming unprivileged people in the past. That is how the protection to another member of unprivileged will going to be happen to this house, because these individuals will tend to be selfish. But why it is not good? Because it will hamper the sense of togetherness by one community that should be held, ladies and gentlemen. Because this is the goal in this debate, right? Simply why this will going to be happen? Because right now you've been live in different spectrum. You will live in Pondok Indah, for example, area compare of most of your group that live in slum area that hard for you to reach and creating relationship when you becoming a rich people at the end of the day. So the idea of protection for minority, the moment you have been lose a sense of togetherness, that will going to be happen under desa das, because these black people will tend to be think about their own security in terms of their own community, right? No matter how big the amount of your money, you still have hope to be happy under outside the house. Because why? Because you have purely support system by this amount of your member at the end of the day. This is something for important, because notice that you are minority, that oppression still going to be happen, even if president, for example, of Trump still oppress the black people in United States of America, we very proud oppose.
Thank you very much, Deputy Leader of Opposition. Deputy Leader of Opposition spent 7 minutes and 31 seconds. Okay, now to open the closing debate, I would like to call the member of the government.
Okay, am I audible?
Yes, you are audible.
Thank you. I will begin my speech in 3, 2, 1. Ladies and gentlemen, we believe that the opening team has misunderstood the motion, ladies and gentlemen. They believe that these type of activity are exclusive to community and individualistic nature, ladies and gentlemen. Here in the closing government, we will prove to you how exactly this type of motion, this type of beliefs can boost a certain communal effort to better the community as a whole, ladies and gentlemen, without sacrificing the togetherness, the sense of community within the underprivileged and minority groups. Points of rebuttals before I go to my arguments. The opening opposition team has delivered to you that you need support, for example, to be happy if you are facing problems. For example, we believe that this kind of support is not needed, is not necessary in this debate, ladies and gentlemen. We believe that we need to analyze a certain struggle that the immigrants and the minority have. It is not only the discrimination, but it is also poverty, ladies and gentlemen. We believe that in the majority of immigrants who are underprivileged, that they live in poverty, right? We believe that the kind of support, for example, oh, you will do better later, or do you want a hug, is not necessary, ladies and gentlemen, because we believe that in order for them to achieve happiness, if they are facing problems, is economical support, a materialistic support, because their problems revolve around economical sector, ladies and gentlemen. They are struggling for example, to pay their rent, to the rent of their house, for example. They do not have any food to buy, for example, because they don't have any money. And we believe that if the community does not flourish, and they can only give a support, for example, like a hug, it does not matter, ladies and gentlemen. In the end of the day, you need food, you need money to pay for your house. A hug does not pay for your house, ladies and gentlemen. So let's get to my argument. I will in this debate, I will prove to you how exactly this type of motion can create a communal effort. For example, ladies and gentlemen, we agree with the opening opposition when they say that there are a certain communal responsibility. If you live in a certain community, ladies and gentlemen, you have to do better. For example, you have to contribute to your community. You have to participate at a gathering, for example. We believe that will happen. That is true, ladies and gentlemen. But here is the caveat of this debate. We believe that this type of motion can boost communal effort. For example, we believe that this type of community, due to the motion, that they have to do something that are above 5, they will not only mingling around, they will not only gather, ladies and gentlemen, they will analyze what they will have a productive discourse, a productive discourse within their community. Okay, let's analyze what exactly is the problem of our community. For example, we are facing this and we are facing that. Okay, as a community, what we can do to do that, because we believe, ladies and gentlemen, it took a communal effort to get out of poverty, of structural poverty, ladies and gentlemen, not exactly an individual effort like the opening government has said before. So this type of gathering can, since it has economical potential, it will score above 5, ladies and gentlemen, because the nature of the motion will treat anything that we do as above 5, and it does not exclusive to an individual things. For example, it can include a communal effort. So this type of community gathering that is productive will score above 5, right? We believe that in this type of gathering, for example, they can discuss business ideas for community. They can create a certain business that can improve the overall condition of the community. If one are more economically capable, for example, they can invest in business idea at their community, ladies and gentlemen. Since it is an infestation, we believe that this also counts, ladies and gentlemen. And no, for the POI, thank you. And we believe that this argument alone can negate the arguments of the whole opposition team, that they will be selfish and they will lose their sense of togetherness. But we believe, ladies and gentlemen, this will produce a sense of togetherness to triumph as a community, for example. But the opening opposition also explained how this type of the underprivileged people are pressurized. For example, we believe that in both of our cases, the government and the opposition team, the pressure will exist. But we believe that the opposing opposition team are being delusional, ladies and gentlemen. Somehow having support can tackle your problems. For example, somehow having a friend can solve your problem that is being having to pay your rent, ladies and gentlemen. But we believe in this case it is not the case, ladies and gentlemen. It is very highly unlikely for you to be happy when your family is starving, when your house is about to be seized, for example, because you do not pay for your taxes, for example. So we believe that in these kinds of cases, the migrants are often the ones who sacrifice. For example, a father will work their body off to provide for their family, ladies and gentlemen, and they do it for the betterment of the family, right? We believe that in these kinds of cases, even though that they are tired, for example, they don't have any rest, the parents, for example, will gain happiness. How so? It is when they see their daughters can eat, for example, when they see their daughters, their sons have access to certain education, they will be happy, ladies and gentlemen. And we believe that this kind of happiness is exclusive in our side, where these people flourish economically. So in this debate, we believe that the closing government has already proved to you that the case of the opening opposition, that it will cause a selfishness, it will destroy the sense of community, is not true. And we believe that this motion should stand. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Member of Government. The Member of Government stands 7 minutes and 9 seconds to respond to the case of the Member of Government. I would like to call the Member of Opposition. The floor is yours. Here.
Am I audible?
Sorry, can you repeat it?
Am I audible?
Yeah, better.
Okay. Wait. Oh my God.
Sure, take your time.
I'm gonna start speech in 3, 2, 1. Ladies and gentlemen, we believe even the case is happened because the economy problem. We believe that the status quo already progressive. That the government already try to give the incentive. For example, like there's the BPJS or the scholarship or the prakerja for the jobless. For example, it's proof to you even the case is if, even that the case is going to be economy, but the economy is already held by the government at the end of the day. The things that we are talking in this debate is on how that this kind of minority and unprivileged get their happiness without burdening them to achieve that the score above 10, above 5, ladies and gentlemen. Several debaters with the government teams out of this house. First of all, the moment when they say on how that the money can create a lot of happiness. For example, like they you should buy house so that you can be happy, ladies and gentlemen. But we believe on how the essence of happy, it's not merely about the house, about buying the house, because that the inside of the privilege they have they have a different demand compared with the majority. For example, like you have a food on the table so that you can be happy, ladies and gentlemen. We believe on how these small things can make them happy, rather than you should buy a house because at the end of the day you will create harm to yourself, because that you have should have the double effort at the end of the day. Second of all, the moment when they say it's okay to be work hard for every single video, every single individual, which is that your majority and your minority. We believe this is injustice, ladies and gentlemen. Let's be comparatively the major and the minor. We believe that the major will easily to doing effort not bigger as the minor, for example. Because why? Because they have a basic demand, they have a support economy, they have the support of education. Comparatively with the minor, ladies and gentlemen, they need double effort to reach those kind of the success. For example, they have, because why? Because at the first begin they have a different starting point, they have less education of the less at the money at the first begin, ladies and gentlemen. And the next, the moment when they say this is will create the meaningful by self pressures, because when you want to trying to reach the capital, we believe no, ladies and gentlemen. We believe that the meaningful of pressure will going to be bad, because on how the one you reach capital, but you let your happiness to go, ladies and gentlemen. You are only focused on without considering what kind of your psychology demand at the end of the day, ladies and gentlemen. And the last, the moment when the club they want to create the communal happy, the communal effort or supporting community. We believe it's not going to be happen, ladies and gentlemen. On how on the current on this current minority will support each other is going to be impossible, because how can they help each other if they are already suffer, ladies and gentlemen. So these cases about the community support or the communal effort will already not exist at the first begin, ladies and gentlemen. So we believe so we so what we want here, that we want as the closing government, that we want to stay in the status quo, ladies and gentlemen. We are let the minority and the privileged to choose their activity that they want, regardless they are productive or not, ladies and gentlemen. Ladies and gentlemen, and we believe that the status quo enough to cover any kind of the economy that chosen by the minority and unprivileged, because so that's why the status quo already enough. So because on how the based on the on the underprivileged and the minority, we are not trying to force people to follow the score above 5, but we are let them to choose based on their capacity and the ability at the end of the day, ladies and gentlemen. So at the end of the day, that we are not let the minority get the burden. So so that's why all we want here, that we want to get to uphold the happiness towards the minority and underprivileged, that in the start in the beginning they already not get it, ladies and gentlemen. Now let's move on my first justifications, like why this is will create the self satisfactions. The idea of the happiness by the minority and the minority is going to limit at the beginning, ladies and gentlemen. Moreover, the moment we're trying to pursue this will limit or decrease the number of happiness. We believe that the moment when you're trying to reach the activity about 5, this will oppress you to follow the regulations inside of the majority. So for example, like they should follow the deadline of of your work, for example, because of your work, because you are and of your work, which is this is will create more on this on how that harm the for your psychological burden, and on how that your happiness at the end of the day should follow your commander. If you can follow the deadline, that's a happiness that coming from your commander, for example. So on how this is case, on how this is sense of happy is decreased because the happiness is going controlled by your boss, for example. You should follow the deadline on how you get this you have that your boss give you thanks at the end of the day, ladies and gentlemen. And we believe this kind of happiness is not going to be healthy, because this is not free as happiness as the human being should have. This is based on the externality of your boss or your commander. This is not based on your internality, ladies and gentlemen. And why this is going to be harm? First things first, it will go into the mentality breakdown of those people, and the second, that you will still get social judge at the end of the day if you want to follow the deadline at the deadline is up, ladies and gentlemen. And why that self-satisfaction is important, ladies and gentlemen. We believe on how that the limitations at the first begin already limit. So that's why on how we need them to survive just based on their capacity and their ability. Even if that we cannot protect them from the discrimination, but at least we not limit the self-satisfaction that they don't have at the first begin, ladies and gentlemen. They can choose on how that the happiness is important, because this is going to the psychological at the end of the day. And the second of all, on how that this will create the double discrimination. We believe that right now the minority never felt never feel the existence of the self-satisfaction. Because why? Because the majority seeing as the weak or the toxic people, ladies and gentlemen. That's why the moment we will force them to pursue the value of the fifth, which is that you want to follow the social demand, which we believe the majority which we believe it's proof to you that the majority perspective is exists, the discrimination still exists, ladies and gentlemen. Because why? Because they should follow the existence of the majority standard, for example. That's why it would be used as the legitimate reasons for blaming minority who are not pursuing the social demand, for example, which is this discrimination is going to be harmed, which is the moment when can ready to reach the existence of the five value, on how that you are not capable to reach the five, the double discrimination will happen for you, ladies and gentlemen. First, why? Because that you will get the burden for the society, discrimination by the majority, and the second, that you will get discrimination by the minority, because you cannot reach the value of five, that is above five, ladies and gentlemen. So that's why we have to oppose.
Thank you very much. Member of UP. The member of UP spent 7 minutes and 12 seconds. To close the government bench, I would like to call the government whip, Mauricio.
Am I audible?
Yes, you are audible.
So I prefer POIs via chat, so please don't disturb me by unmuting yourself during my speech. Thank you. So I will start my speech in 3, 2, 1. Mr. and Madam, we've seen how today's debate goes on about whether which side of the house is going to give more happiness towards this underprivileged and minority groups, right, ladies and gentlemen? But see and notice that the opposition side of the house ideas is very evilish from the very beginning, because they undermine the ability of an individual to be successful, and they undermine the ability of an individual to empower their community. And here, us as the closing government, we're the one that noticed that, and we answer those burdens, right? And notice also that the opposition side of the house is the one that they prefer the world where these people are going to be happy temporarily and suffer their whole life, and even transmit their suffer towards the next generations, regarding to they have no capability to fulfill their daily needs, right, ladies and gentlemen? While here, us as the government side of the house, we acknowledge that these people are the one that is fragile, and we notice that in case to create a better happiness and a sustainable happiness is by proposing these motions, right? And then also to remind you that we have stated to you before that happiness is as for these people. We already characterized to you how these people are those that are, even to fulfill their daily needs, it's hard for them, right? They can't even fulfill, for example, provide their meals, or they can't even pay for their rents and so on and so forth. So it means that happiness for these people is as simple as seeing their needs are provided economically, right, ladies and gentlemen, and thus their ideas that this going to be a burden and so on and so forth, it's not something that is valid, and their ideas about self-satisfaction is also not valid, because it is something that they cannot even afford. They can't even afford their meals. How could they afford to have this kind of self-satisfaction, like hanging out with friends and so on and so forth, right? But that's the whole idea of this debate. And then, so why exactly us as the closing government, we differ from the opening government? So the opening government is taking the approach towards individual approach, and they failed to notice the burden that is being put by the opening opposition, and we're the one who answer it, and we prove to you how this motion can uplift community, unlike the opening that are discussing on individual approach. We answer the burden that the opening opposition give to government regarding sense of togetherness, right? So let's see their arguments first. First, they talk about how this kind of motion is going to give more pressure and burden to these people. No, thank you to these people, because they are simply low in number and they have no capacity and access and so on and so forth. But we already answered to you that either way, there will always be pressure, right, ladies and gentlemen? Either way, they're going still to be discriminated. But in our case, due to motivation in community to flourish economically, this community is not fragile anymore. We explained to you before how that we're not just going to give scores to people for doing individual action, but also we're going to give them scores for doing communal, for example, discussion, things that can uplift the community from inside. And we're the one who noticed that we agree that the society are discriminating towards certain groups, and our goal is to build a stronger and independent community, right? So their points about the pressures and the burdens and so on and so forth is something that is invalid, right? And then the next one is that they both bench, opening and closing opposition, they keep on talking about how this kind of situation is not going to improve the quality of community, because simply people are these underprivileged people are not able to improve themselves, and they are going to be individualistic, and they're going to neglect their society and so on and so forth. And we're already discussed to you how this kind of regulation is going to be better, because they're going to have more activities with their community. They're going to be more aware about what their community needs to improve and how they're going to survive in the situation, right? At least in our side of the house, they will have more resources to at least survive the discriminations, right? And also, if they talk about how these individualistic, these people are going to be individualistic, is actually not getting into my sense, because these people, from those people that are Black or underprivileged and so on and so forth, they already felt how it feels to be underprivileged, right? They know how it feels to be in that community. They know the suffer that their community has. So it means that it's more likely for them to tend to try to support and uplift their community when they are successful enough. For example, let's see how Chadwick Boseman, he gives donations to hospitals that serve Black people, Black communities, for example, or how Michael B. Jordan promoting the Black communities. And they're not going to look away from their societies simply because they are rich, but instead we think that it's more likely for them to support their community because they understand how it feels to be undermined, they understand how it feels to be underprivileged, and thus they want their community to be uplifted as they get this success, right, ladies and gentlemen? So based on that, we can clearly see that the whole idea of the opposition side of the house is failed, because they keep on undermining the ability. They say that they notice that the society they need the power of the society to improve this underprivileged and minority group, but they failed to explain to you, and their scenario is unlikely to be happen simply because these people are not hard work, they're all are not hardworking, and thus they're going to be able to have a stronger community, right? It's something that is illogical. And while on our side of the house, we prove to you how with this kind of mechanism we could create a real better improvement towards the community. And their ideas is actually the one that is being delusional by mentioning that by having friends, having society that are all not working and are all not motivated, they're going to be able to provide their needs, and it's going to pay their debts automatically, right, ladies and gentlemen? So based on that, we believe that we're the one to answer to you the most burden on today's debate, and we believe that all the points from the opposition side of the house is invalid, and thus we're back to propose. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Government Whip. Right, to close this Novice Semifinal, I would like to call upon the Opposition Whip. Floor is yours, here.
I prefer POI through chat, so you can chat if you have POI. It is clear, my voice, my idea?
Yep, loud and clear.
Under the closing government, they already say to us if self-satisfaction it cannot avoid by everyone. It is why we don't want to force those individuals who in minority background to only work in the activity that have scored above 5. So that's why we don't want to limit the self-satisfaction of those individuals to begin with. We will, as closing the oppositions, we will still with the status quo to have the minority or underprivileged background. In terms of money, government already subsidize it, or in status quo mechanism, government only provide the place, government only provide the access. But the one who make decisions to opt in to the score above 5 or under 5, the one is the minority to begin with, right? So that's why because in the end the consequence of the happiness is in the hand of the minority itself. So that's why in the closing oppositions is under this motion, we are not only focused on the score above 5, but we give them choice whether they want to choose the score above 5 or under 5. This is based on the capacity and the interest of each individual to measure the satisfactions of this minority to begin with. Now, before I come to my place, let me respond to the opening government. When they believe the privilege is based on money, the money can make you being respected by others. But the question is that in this gap of economical conditions between majority and the minority, how the part-time job can make we equalize in terms of economy, right? So that's why in the end the proposal that they want to bring under the idea of respect will never be exist, because they never guarantee the idea of money can be achieved, the idea of money will equal with the majority to begin with. In the end, what they want under their proposals should not stand in this debate. Even if the money make them to get respect, but why in the end that's still bad? Because in the end this is a make money under the government bans, this make money as a legitimate reason to discriminate others, because this is bad, because in the end the demand will be higher and higher for the minority to begin with, because they will not only depend on the part-time job, they will depend on work full-time job or etc., right? Moreover, the idea of bigger demand here does not relate or suit with the conditions of the minority to begin with. In the end, even if money will give benefit to them, but in the end this is still worse under the towards the minority, because they need to follow the higher social demand to begin with, right? And also the next rebuttals, when they believe if the moment they have reached, they can help each others, will more sustain happiness, also closing government case, but we say no, because in the end, the minority, they have own life. For example, they are still in the lacking of economy, right? So that's why, how can you help the other the moment you still have a problem in terms of economy, for example, right? So that's why the idea of helping each other the moment you are already rich, this will never happen under their proposal. So that's under their proposal. So and the next rebuttals, when they believe if the party is just temporary fun, but why that's still not okay in our proposal? At least we give this temporary happiness rather than we doesn't give happiness at all. Because under the idea of there is no happiness at all, because they only following the burdening by the social demand to begin with, right? So that's why this is better in our proposal, even this just temporary happiness to begin with. Now goes to the closing government. When they believe if you need to read, if this is there is a communal efforts, communal discussions about business, in the end the economy will be bigger. But this is will never be happen because it is not their focus to build a business to begin with, right? So that's why the moment they gather, they will not have a heavy discussions about business or something like that, because this is not their focus. Their focus is they will share their feeling. For example, the focus is how they will create happiness in terms of their minority, right? So that's why the idea of discussions will never happen under their proposal, even if they have possibility to doing such kind of discussions. But why Indian discussion will be bad? Because in the end, those minority background or underprivileged people, they have no capacity and in terms of good businessmen, for example. So that's why so that's why to find the solution in terms of problem, it will be difficult for them, even if they have capacity or they have basic knowledge. But not all of my underprivileged have that knowledge, right? So that's why in the end, to give communal effort and also communal understanding about business, for example, it will never achieve under their proposals. Also, when they believe about the pressures, the moment there is pressure, we will get motivation. The question is that how can this motivations can make those people to become a better person? Because the idea, under the idea of forcing, this is related to the obligations, right? Means that no choice for you, that means that there is no interest for you, right? That's why the idea of motivations will never exist under their proposal, even if the idea of motivation there, but why that's still not okay? Because in the end, the purpose of happiness will bad in the end, because they believe the idea of illusion of enough. Because I already follow social demand, like I have money, so that's why I enough with my happiness. Moreover, the true happiness is based on the true identity, is based on the true what their will, right? Because they choose to in the work, in the activity that above five, this is not based on their interest, because they choose is based on the other people. In the end, the idea of happiness based on the other people, just because we are following the social standard, not our own standard to begin with, right? So that's why under the closing oppositions, why under the closing government, why in the end happiness it's still bad, when they believe the idea of access, and they believe we will undermine the ability of those underprivileged to improve. But we say no, because in our stance, if we are clear, if we give them choice, is based on the capacity of each individual, the moment they want to choose the above five or under five. So that's why this will never give a burdening to all of them, because we realize with the status quo, we cannot force this minority to be what we want to begin with. And now, what is the mix exclusive under the closing oppositions? First, the idea of self-satisfaction and also double discrimination. Why the idea of self-satisfaction much more better rather than the social supports by the opening oppositions? Because when we talk about the happiness, this is related to the individual feel, right? Because under the social supports need externalities. The moment your brother said, you said, in the end, your happiness will never exist. And then the happiness will not there. Then this is, even if they get a social supporters, this is will not lead to the significant impact, because in the end, those minority will feel I have problems. So that's why those problem coming from the my brother, for example, this is same. So that's why the idea of empathy will less, and that why the self-satisfaction is more important, because both of them cannot win over discriminations, because discrimination will there, but at least we save the happiness of each individual by let them to choose, by not force them to begin with, right? The reason why the self-satisfaction more important, because self-satisfaction is based on individual, because belief cannot depend on individuals. And the idea of double discrimination, it's not only under the bigger umbrella, but also in the little umbrella. For example, because you cannot above five, that's why you will get discriminations by your minority to begin with, because you are following the social demand, right? So that's why we oppose.
Thank you very much, Opposition Whip. The Opposition Whip spent 7 minutes and 24 seconds. Thank you very much for all the Novice semifinalists. Please stay on the main room and wait for the announcement that will be held on the main room as well. Don't go anywhere, guys.
Hey guys, congratulations on finishing Novice Semifinals. What a wonderful debate that was, right? So please wait in this main hall because later the announcements will be given here. If you want to go on a break or if you want to go to the toilet, please please do, but make sure one of your teammates is still standby here in case the announcements are done. Okay, once again, what a wonderful debate that was.